Hello everyone, my name is Curran and welcome to my tutorial on how to steal any clothing pattern. This method is great for reproducing a piece of clothing that fits you perfectly. It's also an unspoken industry norm and almost every major brand participates. This is a very simple concept to wrap your mind around and to master. Now let's jump in. So I have a seam, and along the seam I've embedded pins. So I have 3 pins along this say 7-inch seam. The rub-off works because the head of the pin has a high point. The high point is here. So when I put a piece of fabric on top of the pin, the high point will stick out. As you can see, I've rubbed off the head and I'm moving forward. These placements will give me the line I'm trying to pick up from the garment. And that's the whole concept of rubbing off. In this particular case, I'm rubbing off a denim jacket, but this works with anything. The process is pretty straightforward, although one needs a great understanding of pattern making. My full pattern making course releasing in 2026 will cover this in depth, so check out the link in the description if you want to sign up for the waitlist. But once you understand pattern making pretty thoroughly, you realize that the rubbing off of a garment is great, because what you're doing is picking up the exact measurements from the garment to create a pattern of the garment. So let's look here. I'm going to start off with noting any important technical construction details that would be essential to know. This will vary between garments, but for this denim jacket, I'm noting the exact button and buttonhole placements on the cuffs in front, measuring their distance from the garment edge, the spacing between them, and the precise buttonhole setback. I'm also recording every seam type, the placket structure, pocket construction details, and the grain line direction, so the rub-off captures the jacket's true fit and construction. Wherever you have a seam, you're going to pin into the garment. You can see I've pinned into every seam, and I've added more pins at the intersections of seams. Try to flatten your garment as much as possible. Now I'm taking a piece of muslin that is slightly bigger in height and width than the piece I'm trying to copy. I'm placing it over top and trying to match the grain line. Now I'm pinning the muslin just outside the seam to hold everything in place, keeping it as flat as possible. Make sure to like and subscribe because I'm giving you the craziest free sauce right now. Now in this case, the denim jacket I'm referencing has flat felled seams, which create a sort of ridge on the fabric, so when I'm rubbing my chalk or colored pencil, it will define that ridge for me. In other words, the pinning of the seams is not as crucial. Here I'm working my way around one of the front panels, rubbing it off using the edge of the flat felled seam. In your case, you'll want to feel for the heads of the pins when you're marking. Always feel for the pins. Once the outline is traced, remove the muslin and go over your markings again with a ruler. You may notice some slight inconsistencies, and refining them now gives you a cleaner pattern. I recommend using a pencil or switching to a different color for this part. Continue tracing around all the garment pieces and take a moment to mark any important seam allowances or construction details, for example, the placket fold under, so you have accurate notes when transferring to your pattern paper. Now I'm repeating this process across the remaining sections of the jacket, and I'll point out a few shortcuts and unique cases along the way. Here you're looking at the upper front piece where it connects to the collar. I'm measuring the buttonhole placement directly on the jacket and transferring those measurements onto the muslin. I'm also measuring the placket fold under and making it so I can draft that extension accurately later. For the collar, since it's symmetrical, I'm rubbing off the entire piece and then marking the halfway point. I'll use that center line to duplicate 1/2 when drafting the pattern, which keeps the piece more accurate and symmetrical than tracing both sides. I'm repeating the same process with the back piece to maintain clean symmetry. I'm using an L square here to get a true right angle and to help trace this larger section accurately. Here I'm marking the center point. Then I'm using an L square to establish the correct angle and trace my center line. I can do the same for the back yoke as well. This denim jacket has a 2-piece sleeve, so I start by tracing off the undersleeve. It has a sleeve placket, so I'm noting the extension it requires, as well as the height of the placket directly on the muslin. For the top sleeve, the piece can't be fully flattened, so I'm folding the sleeve at roughly the shoulder seam. I'm pinning along that edge, though ironing is the more accurate option, starting from the armhole seam and ending at the top of the cuff. We'll be using the fold we created to trace a straight line. After that, I'll unpin it, and without unfolding the sleeve, flip it over so the traced line aligns with the fold. Then I'll pin and trace the opposite side, which gives us one clean upper sleeve piece. Don't forget to trace off the interior pocket bags if your garment has them. Now that the muslin pieces are finished, we'll place pattern paper underneath and secure the muslin on top with pins or tape, making sure it lies perfectly flat. From there, we'll use a tracing wheel to transfer all of our markings onto the pattern paper. The tracing wheel is perforating along the lines we marked on the muslin, transferring them onto the pattern paper underneath. So once I remove the pins and lift the muslin, you can see the perforated lines on the pattern paper underneath. Now that the perforated lines are visible, the next step is to connect them with a ruler and add your seam allowances. Now we're repeating this process for each muslin piece. Once everything is transferred onto pattern paper, we can start refining the patterns. I'm adding the essential pattern markings, grain lines, notches, button placements, fold lines, and any construction notes that will help during the sewing process. You want everything clearly labeled so you can refer back to it later or recreate the garment consistently. I'm also marking the name of each piece, how many to cut, and the size. For simple components like the waistband and cuffs, I didn't rub them off since they're just rectangles. I measured them directly from the garment and drafted them by hand. At this point, you'll have a clean set of pattern pieces based on the original garment. From here, you can make any modifications you want, whether it's adjusting proportions, changing fit, or redesigning certain elements. The rub-off gives you an accurate foundation to build from. Once you're happy with the pattern, you can go ahead and cut a test muslin. This lets you check the fit, balance, and style before cutting into your final fabric. And that's essentially the full rub-off process, from prepping the garment to tracing it in muslin to creating a full working pattern. If you want a deeper breakdown of pattern making, my full course releasing in 2026 will cover every step in incredible detail. From garment sloper drafting to grading and professional finishing techniques. You can join the waitlist with the link in the description.